Thanks very much, Emlyn. So as he had said, so I'm Susan Mulcahy, and I'm here for the final talk today, which I thought either is going to work well for me, or it's going to be kind of the worst decision ever to kind of be here at the end of 3 days. But I have made it here. So I'm Susan Mulcahy, and yes, I'm going to be congratulating you on making it to the end of the conference, in addition to some lighthearted thoughts on conversing about data. And first, I think because I'm up here speaking in front of you, it makes a little bit of sense just to tell you a bit about who I am. In addition to the fact that you've probably heard my accent in the 3 nanoseconds that I've been speaking already, you probably guessed that I'm American, and you are correct. So tick number 1, that you've got that on there. So I'll give you some of the background about kind of what brings me here, but first, because you hear the accent, I think it's maybe good just to go around some of the places in the world that got me here. So yes, I was born in New York State and grew up in Connecticut, right next door. High school there and everything. Then I went to Purdue University, where I did mechanical engineering. This is a while ago now. I had a dream to design artificial limbs for athletes at the time. And then got into mechanical engineering and started working for HP. But during the time that I did my undergraduate, then I did a semester in Denmark, and that's where then I did kind of all the elective courses. And then when I came back, though, I was out of sync for all the engineering courses, so I had to still take another term to kind of get through those. But made it through those, and I still remember coming back, so in addition to doing mechanical engineering, then I also rode on the crew team. And I still remember being in the gym once, and with the crew team, when we were doing our workouts, and there was some guy that walked up to me and just said, "You're that girl in my thermodynamics class." And I thought, yeah, I guess I am, but you know me, I don't know you. But so that's a little bit of the life of being perhaps a female in this industry. But we are making strides, and we are changing that over time. So great. So went to Denmark, and then came back, finished the degree, started working for HP in Oregon, San Diego, and then moved to France with HP and was there for a few years. Went up to Fontainebleau in France, which I'll talk about a little bit. Went up to London, back to the States, over to Tokyo for a couple years. So was there for 2 years, and then from Tokyo, 13 years ago, moved here to London. So I'm here now, kids in school, this is home, I'm settled, and love it. So that's what brings me here, so London. But in the process of doing all of that, and with HP and the jobs that I had, when I came back to London, I thought, you know what, I'd really be interested in getting back into some of that bioengineering side of things that interested me. So I ended up at Imperial College, and I did a master's and a PhD, and in the process of learning about bioengineering, and at the time it was traumatic brain injury, I discovered data. And that's really what then gets me here, because I found that, of course, across any of the fields or domains and sectors that you might be in, data, coding, at the time I was using MATLAB, which I loved, and then moved on into Python. Or maybe there's another MATLAB fan out there, but I really like, okay, good. I kind of feel it's a type of thing where you feel like sometimes you say to MATLAB, and you kind of get maybe a nod or nothing at all, or and then I can even go back and say that in my undergraduate, like technically I was just starting, but I actually did Fortran at the very beginning, and before I switched to over to all these others. But yeah, I loved MATLAB. But so now I'm in Python, so that's where my world is now. But so I digress. So I got into the data science side of things and did the PhD and found I loved data, but you might find, and maybe through this talk, I can be quite conversational in the way that I talk about technical topics, and I found for me that has bode well for either presenting or talking about technical topics, maybe more than doing the research. And that's actually pulled me into my field where I'm running a program at Imperial now called Data Spark. And this is where we match up our industry partners with 5 of our postgraduate students for a 6-week data analytics sprint. And we've had projects that are, and the students are doing this project, that it's meant to be student-led. And they're doing projects in everything from with big energy companies on kind of gas distribution, others on price optimization, looking for profitability in certain departments of law firms, or looking at, just finished one with Chatham House, the UK think tank, and looking at nuclear proliferation and the relationships between countries and the alliances that are out there. So as we all know, data science really spans all of the different sectors and industries that are out there. So I have found something that's really important is being able to bridge doing the technical side and talking about it to non-specialists. And that's really going to bring me into my talk for today. So I'm hoping that I haven't really forgotten anything on some of those slides there. So what is it that you've just been through? You've been through 3 days full of talks. We have just a sample of the talks that are here, but more than 50 sessions over the last 3 days. And I would just like to actually congratulate you for making it this far. And maybe, if I can, almost congratulate me in the sense that I feel like the fact that there are more than 2 of you in this room, I already consider this a smashing success. So I'm quite pleased with that, actually, because I wasn't quite sure what I would walk into here. But you've made it through those talks, and you've actually made it now to the 4 o'clock talk on Sunday. So thanks for being here as well with that. But so lots of information that's here, and with that, your brains are full right now. You've learned new things. Maybe you were speakers presenting new things, fitting it into your research or the work that you do. And it's all technical, right? And some of them are going to be more technical than others. Looking even through some of the titles that we didn't manage to sit in on those talks, some are quite funny and some are quite serious. There's going to be a range of them. But of course, we know that getting out into business, we have to be able to communicate our results to others that might not be specialists. And that brings me into, yes, the messages that I'm going to bring, but I did put up this slide here, the TLDR, in that I'm wondering if you are here now just because it's 4 o'clock, it's the closing keynote, or actually you read my abstract and you thought, yes, I want to come. Maybe it was too long. Maybe you didn't read it because, in all honesty, I only submitted it 2 days ago. So in all likelihood, you didn't read it, and you're just here thinking, I'll show up to that, and let's see what she has to say. So that then brings us into this message of these ideas of what you've just been hearing over the last 3 days, and how we can then bring that into, dare I say, everybody else that's out there that's not in this conference, that maybe we work with, whether they're managers or executives, or they're people that, the point that I often want to make is that there are other really smart people out there that might not be knowledgeable in this specific area. So they're very technical, but they might not be specialists in this area. So we're often having to find ways to communicate with others outside our domains. So talking about why is it important, and also then how can we bridge the gap across these specialties. And just because I am the way I am, I'm going to have some lighthearted examples in there as well. So I'll even start off with one to say, maybe set the stage a little bit on even getting more people into the conversation on data, and the fact that we all have different perspectives, often on, even when we're looking at the same thing. That's going to be kind of a theme of what we're talking about here. So with this in mind, so I had to host an awards dinner last week, and it was not in this room, but I thought that was a nice picture, and I get to choose the pictures that I put up. So it was in a really nice room, but it was not this one specifically. It was at Imperial College. It was for this Data Spark program that I mentioned. So we had our industry partners there. We had students that were there. We were celebrating their success. We had the Vice Dean of Education. We had my boss that was there. I was trying to make a good impression. And I kind of, but we also had, probably 25 people in the room, and then we were also trying to dial in at least 20 or so people virtually. So we were doing the virtual event and trying to make sure that everybody felt included. So I kind of said to my kids ahead of time, do you have any suggestions for how I can kind of, warm up the crowd a little bit? And, we're going to have some people virtually and yet some people in London. But the virtual ones, they were dialing in from Asia, from Brazil, from the States. And my kids said, yeah, Mom, I've got a great idea. You should do a pub quiz on Love Island. And I kind of, thought about it, not for long, and I just thought, that's not quite the vibe I'm going for. So I did not do that. You will maybe be happy to hear, maybe disappointed to hear that I did not do that. But I did not go with that one. But I did, though, decide to do some type of kind of pub quiz of bringing people into the London frame of mind. So I ended up doing a short quiz on emojis of London tube stations, okay? Kind of thought there are enough people around that should be able to figure this out a bit. So, right, so of the ones that we had, so I kind of had 10 different ones. I'm not going to go through all 10. But of the 10 tube stations, here was one of the questions. So first one up, or this wasn't the first one, but here's the one I'm going to show you. Which tube station is this one? Question for you. Elephant and Castle. Oxford Circus. I heard Piccadilly Circus, a few things out there. Yeah, so it's like you look at it and you kind of think, I can probably figure that out. And then you look and, yeah, trying to kind of figure out what we're actually looking at. So then I actually wanted to use technology, of course, because we had these people dialing in from, around the world. So I had one of these Mentimeter, like word clouds, so people could submit their answers. And I'm gonna share that with you here. So yeah, so we did get a bunch of answers. You will be pleased to see that Elephant and Castle is on there, yes. Oxford Circus is the correct answer in this. There was a Piccadilly Circus. There's also Bullring on here. The one that I think is quite, clever even, they were just straightforward. Cow tent. Cow tent, right? So they just went straight in and they thought, I'm bringing it back to basics here, folks. So they said cow tent. It's true. That's what we're looking at, cow tent. But so again, we are all looking at those two emojis, and we all have different answers for what we are looking at. So it's just remembering that we will have different perspectives on that. So just for the fun of it, I'm going to go with one more here as well. So one more that came up. What's your thought? Waterloo. Great. So that's it. Now maybe in here with a very London-y crowd, this is quite obvious having that come up. Again, keep in mind, there were people dialing in that were not all from London. So it wasn't so obvious for everybody else that was dialing in. So the answers that we got there, yeah, we got a number of them. Yeah. We got a number of answers, and some of them you kind of think, yeah, okay, we'll go with that. So, okay, we're going to start easy here. Right. So, of course, yes, the correct answer is Waterloo. But then, going for the straightforward shower, toilet. Good. I like that. But Blackfriar, that's an interesting interpretation. But the one that really got me, Shoreditch. Let's think about that one for a moment, okay? Shoreditch, right? Okay, so yeah, they were going creative on that one. And maybe they didn't really know, but they thought that could be Waterloo. So maybe someone that just likes toilet humor. But anyway, so that was what was happening there. But of course, this is all coming up. I'm supposed to bring this back to data and conversations. What's the point of all of this? Well, part of it's just remembering that we can all look at the same thing, and we can then have different perspectives. So different people can look at the same thing and have different perspectives on it. So we can see that. But so let's remember that everything we end up seeing is really a perspective. And I know that in this world, especially in a very technical room, we like to believe that it's all about ones and zeros. I mean, I got to tell you, when I am teaching a class on Python or pandas and I get to the point on Boolean values, I feel like I just find such satisfaction in some of it. Something in life that's either true or it's false, right? It's one or the other. It's true or it's false. There's something so satisfying about it. I know not everyone gets that excited about it, but I find it quite satisfying. But in reality, everything we see is really perspective. It's not necessarily the ground truth, but it's what we are seeing. And sometimes what we actually see depends mainly on what we look for. So we have to remember that as well, that again, we're not always seeing what everyone else might be seeing. And that our perceptions are fallible. We sometimes see what isn't there, and we are prey to optical illusions. Occasionally we hallucinate. We are error-prone. So it's hard to think about that because we kind of think, no, we are technical people and we kind of can put things into nice categories and boxes. But it doesn't always work that way. But of course, sometimes our eyes deceive us. This here, these are actually two perfectly smooth circles. But they don't look like it. But we keep saying, no, they must be. Well, no, they're not. But actually, if you took, say, a ruler or checked the diameter all the way around, these are perfectly smooth circles. Yeah, I know, it's kind of, you kind of think it can't be, but it deceives us. And so even when we're sitting here knowing that it is, we don't believe it. So again, we have different perspectives on this. So a lot of this is just thinking about, okay, there are other perspectives out there, and sometimes we can fool ourselves. So let's think about some of the examples we've seen in the past, right? Some of those. So how about this one? We remember that one. The old blue and black dress, or that's what I think it was. What about everybody else? Who saw, I'm on this team, I'm blue and black. Blue and black? Okay, good number of you. How about people that saw, I think some people say that this is white and gold? See, the first time when this first came up and someone said white and gold, I thought it was like candid camera. I thought, how is it possible that someone's actually seeing that as white and gold? And even now, when I look at this, I still feel like maybe that's light blue and a bit of bronze in there. But it's not white and gold. But I get it. I've kind of heard has to do with natural light versus inside light, and everyone sees different things. But anyway, our eyes, it can kind of fool us. How about this one? What do you see? Duck, rabbit. Duck, rabbit. Once you see, so you usually see one to start with, and then it takes a moment, and then you'll see the other one. But again, we don't always see it. And then we realize, once someone says, oh, like I probably see duck first. But then when someone says rabbit, I think, oh, actually, there's another perspective. And now that you've said it, I can see it. But I couldn't see it at first. So it's just reminding us, actually, maybe there are a couple perspectives and that we do see it in there. Okay, here's one that kind of can trick us a little bit. Is this woman spinning clockwise or counterclockwise? I'm hearing both. I'm hearing counterclockwise. I'm hearing clockwise, right? So, but actually, the way she's spinning and the way we're just seeing the silhouette, actually, which of us is right? Is she going clockwise or counterclockwise? Are you right or am I right? Because I kind of think maybe she's spinning one way, but maybe she's spinning the other way. Are we both right? And sorry, I had to throw this in here. Is this feeling a little quantum? But basically, it's just this thought of actually, right, let's go back now. We can see it, and actually, maybe we can't quite tell from here. But if we add one little line, there's now, this one on the left, there's a little white line that's drawn in to kind of imply that she's spinning to the left. And this one here, there's a little white line to make it look like she's spinning to the right. So again, it's just showing us that we can all look at the same thing and not quite see what everybody else is seeing. So we get into that. So Moving on, this is just thinking about, we've just seen a number of examples where we can have different perspectives on the same topics. And this conference has been full of so much knowledge. The speakers, the talks, the people, the tools, Python, have to say that in there, so much. And we want to make sure that people outside of this conference are able to then be able to enjoy or get part of that knowledge as well. But I started this talk saying that I'd like to bring more people into the conversation on data. So let's, in order to quote Simon Sinek, if any of you know him, start with why. Why do we need to do that? So first of all, he's a speaker, he's an author, but he talks about with businesses and leaders that often we need to start with why we're doing something. So why is it that it's important to bring other perspectives and voices into this conversation on data? Well, for me, the main reason we want to think of this is because none of us, whether you're technical, not technical, anywhere, none of us ever wants to feel like any specific algorithm, machine learning model, or decision on data was made for everyone else except me. So we really want to make sure that everybody's included, whether you are a developer, a coder, whether you're a decision maker, or you're actually a user. So it's very important to bring a lot of these perspectives in. So if we take it now into, say, machine learning for a moment and think about data and data representation, if, for example, we have supervised machine learning and we're doing a prediction, if we are trying to do image recognition and we've got cats, images of cats and dogs, our labeled data set, and okay, I know there aren't specifically 50 up here, but let's say that we've trained our model on, say, 50 cats and 50 dogs, and then we end up with, we've got an image, I should say, down at the bottom, and we're trying to figure out, is this a cat or a dog? Well, of course, we humans know which one it is, but the algorithm can only figure it out based on the information that's actually been fed into it. So when we look at this with an equal training, it's likely to say, most likely it's a dog, it's not a cat. Okay, fair enough, we understand that. But what happens then when we're training our data, just thinking about algorithms now, but instead of doing equal data sets, we now do mostly cats and just say 5, 7 dogs or so, and that's it. And then we try and do a test, and we say, let's look at this image. What's it going to say now? Well, in this case, it's likely to end up saying, okay, I don't really know much about a dog, but I know a lot about a cat, and I think maybe it's probably more likely to be a cat. I'm not really sure, or it might be a little bit of a dog. But so this is now just a machine learning algorithm and an example, but I think the same holds true when we come to conversations and conversing with people outside of our specialisms, that having the other points of view really make a difference, and we need to know about them. Also because when it comes to data and conversations, that this impacts more than just businesses and data, it impacts lives. So we want to have other perspectives in there. And that can often mean then talking to people outside of our specialism. So it's important to be able to do that. And if we're only talking to people that are specifically in our area or in our field, we end up in these echo chambers, right? And we know that that's gone wrong, I think, as an American, and looking at some of the past elections, perhaps, it has gone wrong at times. Or, sorry, maybe I shouldn't say gone wrong, but it has gone, it has influenced, I'll just say that. But so we want to make sure that we are moving beyond just the clusters of the people that we are speaking to. So thinking about this and the clusters that we are speaking to, I think it's important because we can think back to the optical illusions that we saw, and we can see that a number of us can have different opinions based on the same thing that we're actually looking at. And so with that in mind, we want to be able to talk to other people outside of our specific fields. So another analogy for us. 20 years ago, I lived in France, and just south of Paris in Fontainebleau. And in Fontainebleau, there was this amazing forest that you would walk through. And to get onto it, or to get into it, you would start walking through one of the paths. And of the paths that are actually there, you could see really far ahead of you, and you could see far behind you, but it was impenetrable to the left and the right. You couldn't see what else was out there. But you might continue on your path and then find out that the light might start changing at some point. And then as you approached it, you'd realize once you were there, you were coming up to an intersection. And only once you were at that intersection could you see really far down another path one way or another. And it's once you were at that point, you were able to see what was happening in that direction of the forest or another. And I think of that, so with these intersections going through the forest, again, it's a bit like conversations and trying to find the intersection point with others where we have something in common and we can converse about other topics outside of our own specialisms and the importance of that. So here's a woman as well, Dervla Murphy, and she was an Irish writer, and she unfortunately passed away last month, but at the wonderful age of 90. So she had a great life, and she was quite adventurous. And I like thinking of her because of thinking about connections and finding out what's in between. So when she was 10, she was given a bicycle and an atlas. So a map of, the world and a collection of maps. And she decided a few days after that she wanted to ride her bicycle from where she was in Ireland to India. This was her decision. She wanted to do it. 20 plus years later, about 20 years later, so I think it was 1963, she did it. Solo woman on her bicycle. She rode from Ireland to India. I think this is amazing. She wanted to find out what was in between what she knew in Ireland and what she didn't know, what was in India. So she decided to ride her bike, and it's a great way to find out about what's in between. So we can think about, there's a lot in between Ireland and India, many different cultures, people, and I'm impressed with all of what she was trying to figure out. The thing is, but what we sometimes find out is that when we're trying to understand about these connections and what we know and what we don't know, and the connections, people won't easily tell you what they don't know. And I think it's a very human thing, and they often won't tell you. Often it's because we think we should know. And I guess sometimes maybe there's a little bit of shame involved, but we are humans, and so when we're outside our own specialist area, we think about, well, I know this, maybe should I know that? And we want to share knowledge, but actually it can be a little bit difficult. But we do all have, I'm a firm believer in that we all have a strength and expertise somewhere. But in having that expertise somewhere, sometimes we can get to the point where we become certain of the outcome. And when we are certain of the outcome, sometimes things don't quite end up the way we expect. So I'm going to show you a short video. It's less than a minute here. But so again, I grew up on the East Coast in the US, and in the winters, lots of snow, people would put out bird feeders, and there would end up being it was almost like a sport, basically. My dad used to almost treat this as a sport. He'd put out a bird feeder, and of course, the squirrels would come and try and get to the bird feeder. So there are all sorts of deterrent devices, and he had cones out there trying to make sure that even when the squirrel was coming around, it couldn't actually get there. So back to the idea of you think you know the outcome. Just going to show us what's happening here. This is quite a familiar scene for me. This is not for me. This is a video I found online. But again, thinking about what's happening. I hope sound might work here. No, sound is not going to work here.
Microphone down onto it.
Let's do that. Okay, let's do this. And hopefully...
Poor little squirrel's having a tough time. Oh. Pool's a little slippery. Yep, now you're on. Here we go. Yep, chew, bear. Still metal.
So, okay. That's our video, but basically it's just showing us that this was a bit of a sport growing up, just watching the squirrel and the bird feeder, everything. But it's we think we know what's going to happen. Basically, we kind of think he's either going to get down there, he's going to get the bird seed, or he's going to end up falling off or whatever, but we did not expect that to happen. So it's just reminding us that sometimes we don't quite know what's going to happen. Okay, I'm going to try and forward the slide without starting the video again, but let's see if that, hang on a second. There we go. So sometimes we can get stuck and think we know the outcome, but it's not quite where it's going. So final almost analogy or points here, but this is an article I found in Nature Physics, which actually I found really interesting and liked it, because I think it kind of breaks the stories down. But so this is talking about, again, thinking about all of the knowledge that we've gained over the last few days, and how we can go out and communicate that to our colleagues that are maybe non-specialists in this area, and how to speak to others. So I'm going to bring our attention to this picture at the bottom here. And actually, I'm going to kind of bring this up. Does anyone know what this is? A picture of this? It's hard to maybe tell what it is. But it's an animal, and there's a tail, and there are legs, and there are horns at the right side. So it's actually a bull, and it's from Picasso. And so this is kind of a way of thinking how we can break it down. But so it's hard to tell, but once someone says, okay, here's a bull, and this is what we're looking at, that there are other ways that from there, once you get to the essentials, you can start adding more detail onto it. And you can think about, okay, you can add more of the drawing, you can add more detail, and then you can even add the outer coat to kind of explain what else is there. So sometimes we need to go all the way down to what we all agree we know, and then add more detail from there in order to share the message. So communicating results, this is from the article, communicating results across different disciplines may require a lot of thought, but it's worth the effort. Not only may it inspire others, you may discover new ideas and questions in the process of breaking down a problem to its bare essentials. Good science communication lies in the compromise between precision in every detail and easy-to-grasp ideas. So, for example, Bos taurus lineus, I didn't know what that was, I had to Google it. Turns out that's the scientific name for a bull. So sometimes we think about, we might see something, and if it's outside our area of knowledge, we don't know what's being discussed. Maybe even add a picture on there, sometimes that can help too. But so thinking about a lot of these concepts and trying to break it down. So we want to end up trying to remember the bull and bring your messages back to the essentials. So let's go out and bring more of us into the conversation on data. And with that, I will say thank you very much.